Today I'm going to give you a next season plan that works even if the patch changes numbers. So this is not a tier list video, it's not a hype list, this is how to not break your season video. We will be focusing on 4 characters: Bing 2, Thea 3, Erika 1 and Rosa 2. Now let's break it down properly. But before we talk characters, you need the 4 constraints that decide whether your season feels good or feels miserable. Constraint 1. Uptime. We need to answer the question: does your build deal damage while moving, or do you need to stop to do damage? In higher tier content, stopping is a tax. The more you stop, the more you die, the more you lose time. Constraint 2. Stability. How often do you die? And more importantly, when you die? And is it predictable? The worst builds are not glass cannons. The worst builds are builds that randomly die to common situations, because that ruins progression, farming and game experience. Constraint 3. Multiplicative scaling. Does your build stack multiple layers that multiply each other, or are you scaling one stat linearly? For example, Spellburst style triggers, conversion mechanics, layered burst windows, those typically beat pure linear scaling in deep content. Constraint 4. Economy. Can you afford the build when the season starts? This is the most underrated factor. If the build requires popular gear, your early season is not about skill, it's about whether you can buy the parts. A build that is 10% weaker but 80% cheaper often performs better for most players. So next season, the real question isn't what is S tier. The real question is what can I complete early and scale reliably. Now we take those constraints and apply them to our 4 picks. But before that, our previous Overrealm season has taught us some lessons, and they will still apply for the next season. Lesson 1. The best builds didn't feel strong because they had more DPS. They felt strong because they had less downtime. Lesson 2. Survivability is a DPS stat. If you die, you lose more damage than you gain from any offensive upgrade. This matters especially early season when your build isn't complete. Lesson 3. The 2-phase meta. Most good players have character for the start and an endgame form of this character or other character. Because most people fail when they force the endgame form too early. Lesson 4. Market pressure is real. The most popular characters don't just cost more, they cost more at the worst possible time. And it's when you need them the most. So next season your plan should be staged. First of all, stabilize early, then build currency, and then pivot to the high ceiling setup once you can afford it. Now let's go deep into each character. First of all, let's talk about Bing 2. Bing 2 is not a strong spellcaster. Bing 2 is a system scaler. He becomes dominant when he transitions from I press buttons to deal damage into my engine is running and damage happens automatically. That engine is built around the idea of Spellburst synergy. Why Bing 2 is always great choice in the meta? It's simple. Bing 2 has 3 build archetypes, and that makes him extremely adaptable. First, Nova for Vita Clear, Projectile for control delivery, and Trap version for safer bossing and preloading damage. When one route gets nerfed or awkward, another often survives. That is why the character stays relevant. Bing 2 and the market. How not to lose the season? Because Bing 2 is popular, your season plan matters. Here are 2 strategies. Strategy A. Keep a staged build. You level and farm using a stable, cheaper configuration, then pivot into a real Bing once you can afford the core. Strategy B. Play an unpopular variant early. If Nova is expensive, play Projectile. If Projectile is expensive, play Traps. You're still Bing 2, you're just avoiding the market trap. So, Bing 2 is a top tier choice next season if you can handle the early ramp, can farm despite market pressure, and understand that build is not complete until the engine is solved. If you want a smooth early season, with no dependency on contested items, being 2 is not the easy option. Now let's talk about Thea 3. Thea 3 is a scaling mechanic disguised as a character. Blessing converts into Erosion Burst. That conversion is why her endgame damage can look unreal, but it also creates a strict identity. She rewards players who manage stats well, and punishes players who don't. Why Thea 3 will still have a place next season? High ceiling mechanics remain high ceiling mechanics unless they are removed. If her conversion loop remains intact, Thea 3 remains relevant. Overrealm already showed the issue. When sustain and defenses tools get reduced, Thea becomes less forgiving, and we felt that with candle removal. Thea 3 gameplay reality is rhythm and timing. The difference between average Thea and great Thea is not gear, it's uptime, how cleanly you convert buffs into damage, and how little time you waste outside your effective window. So, there is a great video from another content creator explaining Thea 3 in detail, and I will give a link into the description so you can check it and learn more about this character deeply. But for the general, let's continue. So Thea 3 succeeds next season if built as an order. And first of all, you need consistency of your conversion loop. Then you need sustain and mitigation plan. Just a basic defensive baseline to prevent random deaths, and of course damage multipliers once uptime is stable. If you ignore defense, Thea becomes a reset simulator. Believe me, I felt it. I played Thea in the not previous but season before that, season 9, and yeah, I felt the pain. As I said earlier, the video link with a great explanation from another content creator I will give in the description. So now let's talk about Erika 1. By the way, Erika 1 is a great time to farm machine. Dual blade multi-strike plus mobility gives you what matters at season start: speed into maps, speed through maps, and early currency generation. Why Erika 1 survives every season? Because early economy always matters. People pick complicated or expensive builds and spend days assembling them. Erika 1 players are already farming and controlling the market. That advantage is structural. There are two valid Erika plans. Erika is a full season character. You commit to investing and pushing her into higher damage and stronger bossing. This is viable, but it's cost more later and it's a bit more difficult. Plan B. Erika is the first weak accelerator. This is the most efficient plan for many players. You start as Erika, you farm currency quickly, then pivot into a more expensive build once the market stabilizes. This approach avoids early market pain. Erika 1 has its honest limits. Usually needs expensive gear to reach peak damage and bossing consistency, and is not always perfect depending on your variant and your defensive plan. So if your goal is I want to kill the hardest bosses with minimal risk, Erika is not your final form. But if your goal is to get rich early, she's extremely hard to beat. So about the priority. First of all, you need to focus on movement and tempo, so clear speed is a product. Then you should take baseline defenses so you don't lose time to death. Then you scale your damage after the tempo is stable, and then you adjust for bosses when you start pushing into deeper content. The main Erika failure is overbuilding damage while ignoring survivability and losing more time to death than you gain in damage. So in conclusion, you can start with Erika, and that will be a practical pick if you want smooth start, fast maps and reliable early currency. If you want maximum game ceiling without heavy investment, Erika is not your best endgame identity. Now, let's talk about Rosa 2. Rosa 2 is a build around stability. Sustain, block potential, safe play under pressure. Her power is that she keeps uptime even when fights get messy. Why Rosa 2 gains value in the hard seasons? If next season adds difficulty or punishes death more, Rosa becomes even better. Because Rosa doesn't rely on fragile windows. She is slow, but she survives. And that means she progresses. Rosa is a bossing identity character. Rosa is the one of the safest bossing characters because she performs well in extended fights and when you make mistakes. She is good choice if you prioritize consistency, less resetting, and safe progression. Trade-offs. Rosa can feel sluggish early. She becomes better once talents and gear start synergizing. And our gear demand makes min-maxing expensive. So Rosa is a stable progression peak, not the rush to map speed. So you won't really make huge currency early on with this character, and I highly recommend you to consider Rosa as a character as a second character. To build Rosa correctly, you need to first focus on defensive engine, sustain and block plan, then damage consistency, then do some refinements for the clear speed, but only after survival is solved, and then min-max. Rosa's biggest mistake is building damage first and still dying. Her identity is survival first. So in conclusion, Rosa is the safest recommendation for players who want to clear content reliably with minimal frustration. But it's not the fastest, so if you want to rush early, make some crazy stuff like streamers do, Rosa won't be your first pick. So now you pick based on constraints and you know about most of the character. And if you want the strongest engine build, pick Bing 2, but expect market pressure and early ramp issues. If you want the highest ceiling, I recommend you Thea 3, but expect execution requirement and fragility if you mismanage buffs. If you want the best start and fastest economy, pick Erika 1 and decide later whether to stay or pivot. And if you want to safest progression and bossing, so for example you want to receive chests from the bosses and tower defense, I highly recommend you to pick Rosa 2 when you have money for the build, because there you won't be punished for your mistakes and you will beat the bosses easily, of course with the high investment. So your season is determined by whether you can complete the build early and farm consistently, not by what tier list says is strongest. Next season won't be won by a single character. It will be won by players who pick a build they can actually complete, stabilize, and scale. So, if you enjoyed this video or you want to learn more about the game, content itself, subscribe for my YouTube channel, for my Twitch channel, and join me on streams. I play a variety of games and will try to post as valuable content for you as it's possible at my current capacity. So thank you guys for watching and see you in the next one.